focusing on the College of Science and Health. Eagle Lead stands for Leadership, Engagement, and Development and is a speaker series debuting on campus this semester. Throughout Eagle Lead, each college at the university will have 3 feature weeks, including an introduction, a leadership topic, and a speaker from the community, which is what we're having tonight. To end the College of Science and Health's presentations with Eagle Lead, tonight we have Teri Wildt, who is the Director of Community Engagement for the Southwest Wisconsin region of Mayo Clinic Health Systems. After this presentation, there will be time for questions, and on a final note, the session is being recorded for future viewing. So you're all good to go, Teri.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Okay, well, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. In my role in community engagement, I have lots of opportunities to speak in the community about various initiatives that Mayo Clinic Health System is involved with, but it's pretty rare that I actually get to talk about community engagement as a discipline and as a profession. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that. Just as a point of reference, Liv noted that I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the Southwest Wisconsin region of Mayo Clinic Health System. On this map, that is the region at the right lower corner, and it includes from Arcadia in the north, Prairie du Chien in the south, and Decorah, Iowa in the west to Tomah in the east. Mayo Clinic Health System has 4 regions, and we are all part of the Mayo Clinic enterprise. And in the Mayo Clinic enterprise, there are 70,000 employees, so it is a very large organization. Tonight, I want to talk just briefly, provide a definition of community engagement and a little history. I want to talk about the work itself and the value it gives to organizations, and then just a little bit about pursuing a career in community engagement and your own personal community engagement. So in preparation for this presentation, I Googled and looked to find some succinct and all-encompassing definition of community engagement. And I was not able to do that. It seemed like most of the definitions I found were very specific to that particular industry or to that field of work. So I created my own definition, and that definition is that community engagement is an intentional and multifaceted approach to forming and nurturing relationships between an organization and the community it serves. And the foundations of community engagement are investment, collaboration, and mutual benefit. And the overall goal of community engagement is to build social capital. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So you will find people working in community engagement in various fields and industries and businesses. At present, you will probably find it most often in the fields of healthcare and higher education, but I've listed a few other areas where you will find community engagement people. Sometimes you will hear it referred to as corporate citizenship, and when it's done on a national or global basis, it's often referred to as corporate social responsibility. So I think I owe my friend and colleague, Lisa Klein, a thank you for being here with you tonight. As I mentioned, higher ed is another area where you will find people working in community engagement, and Lisa is UWL's Community Engagement Coordinator. And I love that on her profile, she says, I am a one-stop shop point of contact to help community members and the university connect. And that is something we have in common. That is my role as well. And in particular, when you have large organizations like the university and Mayo Clinic Health System, it can be really tough for community members and community organizations to make contact with us and to connect to the right people. And so having people in community engagement roles makes that much easier and provides a warm welcome and then a warm handoff when we connect them to others in our organizations. So within the healthcare field, community engagement really got its start in 2010 with the signing of the Affordable Care Act. And that's because the Affordable Care Act has a requirement for tax-exempt hospitals that they must conduct every 3 years a community health needs assessment. And then after conducting that assessment, they have to forge a plan to address the pressing health needs of their community. And the reason this was incorporated into the Affordable Care Act is that they wanted hospitals to move outside their walls and collaborate with other organizations and pool resources to improve the overall health of communities. And the entire goal there was, if you improve the health of community, you can reduce healthcare costs because you can keep people healthier and keep them out of hospitals. So that was the impetus for this mandate within the Affordable Care Act. We have to report annually to the IRS on the progress we're making on our current 3-year plan. And then every 3 years, we have to publish our report and also make that available to the public. If we fail to comply with any of these rules, we are subject to a $50,000 fine per occurrence, and we can lose our tax exempt status. So it's kind of a big deal that we stay on top of this and that we do it well. And when this came about in 2010, most hospitals did not have people in roles that could just quickly accommodate this. Community engagement, as someone said to me once, was on everybody's to-do list, especially like in the public affairs realm. Everybody was supposed to do some community engagement. But when it's on everybody's list, then nobody owns it. And so it wasn't given a lot of attention. But because of this requirement in the Affordable Care Act, they needed people to be on top of the community health needs assessment, and more importantly, to be out there collaborating with organizations, working with other organizations to meet the letter of the law and the rule. So that's how community engagement got its start. And at Mayo Clinic, community engagement is under the umbrella of external affairs with other outward facing functions. So we are aligned with marketing, design, public affairs, community engagement, and then government engagement. And it can be kind of confusing how these different groups, what their roles are. And of course, there's a lot of overlap between them, especially between public affairs and community engagement. So I have a little illustration I use to help people understand what the difference is between the two. So if you are in public affairs, you are probably the person at the podium in this picture. And if you're not the person at the podium, you are the person who crafted very carefully a message to share with this group, to hit all the right notes and to convey exactly what you want to share and hopefully leave people with positive perceptions of your organization. If you are in community engagement, you are sitting in the crowd because that's where you live. You are in the community, you are forging relationships, you are interacting, you are gathering feedback, you are sharing information. And so you want to be there with the people hearing the message to see how they respond, to ask for their feedback so that you can then provide valuable information to your organization and to your public affairs colleagues to make sure that we know the pain points in the community, that we don't misstep, and that we handle things appropriately. Community engagement, at least in my world, is divided into two major buckets. The first is broad scale community engagement, which typically we just call community engagement. And then there's relationship management. And broad scale community engagement is where we're casting a wide net. It's like you hear about mass marketing. Well, this is mass community engagement. We're trying to maintain a high profile in the community, to be very visible, to be out in front of lots of people, having our people engaging with lots of people. We're really hoping that people will get a sense that they know us as an organization, hopefully that they like us, and ultimately that they trust us, because of course you can't provide a lot of healthcare to people if they don't trust you. We focus on strategic audiences because we have limited resources in terms of people and money. We have to focus, where we get the greatest return. Very often that is getting in front of young families because we know that women between the age of 25 and 50 not only make the bulk of healthcare decisions for themselves, but also for their spouses and for their children. So having those folks have a sense that they know us is very important. You will often find us doing broad scale community engagement at health fairs and expos, festivals, and at nonprofit events, which we are often a sponsor of. And sometimes we are there as well. Some of the tactics we use for the broad scale community engagement, financial contributions and sponsorships. We actually have a pretty sizable budget to support initiatives and causes in the community, especially those that align with our mission and our efforts to address priority health needs. We work to engage our leaders and our staff in the community, and there's a lot of structure that goes to that. We provide a lot of community health education by having our medical experts share their knowledge and expertise with the community. We work often with other organizations with like missions or with missions that align with our own. And we promote employee volunteerism by making our employees aware of various opportunities. The other bucket of community engagement is relationship management. And this is much more focused, very strategic. We're casting a narrow net. We are focusing on key stakeholders, community influencers, and partner organizations. And by influencers, I mean that small handful of people in the community that when they talk, people lean in and want to listen. So those folks are very important to us. It's a very personalized approach. We try and link the right person with the right relationship. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of commitment to not only foster relationships, to maintain them, and sometimes do a little damage control when things don't go quite as we expect them to. So in relationship management, some of the tactics are to identify those high value relationships and partnerships, those areas where we need to focus most of our time and attention. We look for or create opportunities for regular interactions. Very often we are sharing information with these individuals and groups, and we are seeking their input. We make sure that our leaders are at key community tables where decisions are made and relationships are formed. And I used a photo of UWL in this picture because I wanted to share that our relationship with the university is one that is very high on our list of priorities. Our regional vice president, Dr. Paul Mueller, if Chancellor Gao had an event at UWL, he would want to be there. He'd want to be supportive of Chancellor Gao and of the university. They talk frequently. We collaborate on different things, including a research agreement and some sports medicine programs. So that would be a good example of a high priority relationship that we want to give time and attention to. So I mentioned social capital early on, and while I didn't have a good definition for community engagement, I do have a great one for social capital. And I read it years ago in the book Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance, which was a bestseller a few years back. And the first time I read it, I loved it, and I love it more every time I read it because I think it's just perfect. So when we're talking about social capital, at least according to J.D. Vance, he says it's a professor's term, but the concept is pretty simple. The networks of people and institutions around us have real economic value. They connect us to the right people, ensure that we have opportunities, and impart valuable information. Without them, we're going it alone. I'd like to take just a little closer look at this. So he says that this network of people and institutions around us has real economic value. So he's not just saying that it's nice to have networks, it's nice to have support. He's saying it's a matter of dollars and cents. And so if you think of this, whether it's in terms of yourself and your own social capital, your own networks, or you think about it in terms of your organization, we're talking about the bottom line here. We're talking about money. These networks connect us to the right people and ensure that we have opportunities and impart valuable information. And so, it's because of these networks and being at tables and interacting with people and having conversations and connecting the dots between different conversations and seeking input from your stakeholders and influencers, that is of great value to organizations. As he says, without it, you're going it alone. And so, you think of the difference between, say, for instance, a local bank that is involved in everything, has their people at different tables in the community, supports lots of nonprofit efforts, is well known, is marching in parades, as an entity. That's an organization that has those networks and people know them and trust them. But you think of maybe a big bank that's headquartered somewhere else and simply has a branch in town and doesn't have those same connections and doesn't invest in the community in that same way. That's where they mean you're going it alone. You don't have that same network that can provide that economic value to your organization. So I threw this slide in here. We're talking about community engagement tonight and this network that provides this value to you. And recently in the news, they've been talking about the very real need to improve our fire stations in La Crosse. There's a lot of old buildings. Some of them have asbestos. They don't support modern firefighting. They may be unsafe. Some of them are not well located. So there's all sorts of good reasons why we need to upgrade those facilities or build new facilities. But sometimes you can have the greatest business case in the world, and yet when you get into the community, your message is going to fall flat, and it may even, upset people. It may even harm your reputation. So here's where, having that network, having people working in community engagement provides you that knowledge, that information that hopefully allows you to sort of sidestep big issues in the community, especially those that can harm your reputation. And nobody asked me my opinion on this, and the city and the fire chief certainly don't need my input. But I was surprised that they were talking about raising station number 4, pictured here, as the first step in this effort, because that's an iconic building on the north side of La Crosse. It has a lot of sentimental value. People feel very strongly about it. And in this community, people feel very strongly about tearing down old buildings in general. If you know much about the community, you know that people to this day still complain about several buildings that were raised in the late 60s and early 70s to make way for new buildings. And people still have this heartache and this sense of loss because of those buildings. So, community engagement is about knowing your community, connecting with people, asking for input, and advising your leaders on where the pain points are and where you're likely to run into concerns and issues in the community when you share information or you make business decisions. And you can't always avoid conflict, but at least you need to have a good picture of what you're going to find, when you get into the community. And just briefly, my route to community engagement. I have a degree in business administration, and I worked for a number of years in the for-profit sector before being hired by Franciscan Healthcare Foundation. And Franciscan Healthcare Foundation was the fundraising arm for Franciscan Healthcare, which is now Mayo Clinic Health Systems. So I was in fundraising, sometimes called development, sometimes called advancement. But fundraising is a relationship-based role. It's all about getting to know people, helping them get to know your organization, connecting their interests in your organization with opportunities to provide financial support for your organization. So as part of that, I was involved in the community. I created a network for myself of contacts and relationships to support my work in fundraising, and also because I'm just sort of a joiner. I like being involved in the community. And I had experience managing a grant-making program. And as I mentioned, that community investment is a big part of what we do in community engagement. And so when a position opened in community engagement, I saw it as a great opportunity. It's the exact same skill set. It's all relationship-based. But as I always tell people, I no longer have to ask for money, which I'm okay with. That's kind of a benefit. So I moved into community engagement, and ever since I felt like I just landed in the right place. It's just a really good fit for me. For people who might want to pursue a job in community engagement, I have some tips and some thoughts here. First of all, obviously, it's good to know your community. And a tip there is to simply, listen to, watch, read, have some interaction with your local news on a daily basis, whatever form you want to get it in. My team is younger and they struggle with this because, if you didn't grow up with your parents reading the newspaper or having the 6 o'clock news on, it doesn't come natural to be interested in the local news. Sometimes, especially if you're younger, it's just kind of boring. But you will know more about your community and you will connect more dots if you regularly listen to your local news than people who don't, and you'll be able to offer value to your organization. To be successful in this role, you need to enjoy being on the go. Before COVID hit, I would say out of a typical 9-hour workday, I spent 3 or 4 hours at my desk, and the rest of it I was either going to meetings or meeting with people one-on-one or attending events. You know, it may sound somewhat glamorous. It's really a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of chicken dinners involved. But you know, again, I just enjoy that type of work. You know, you have to enjoy that. You know, you're not going to sit at a desk all day, and for some people, that's a great thing. As I noted, that you need to be at these tables, you need to be able to connect the dots and identify opportunities for your organization, or be in places where people will tell you about opportunities. You have to be comfortable advising leadership on matters involving the community. So it's not uncommon for the leadership to come up with that business decision, which makes perfect sense. But because they're not always involved in the community, certainly not to the extent you are, they may not know some of the nuances and some of the pain points. And it's your job to inform them, you know, here's how I think the community might respond to that, or here's what I think they're going to hear when we say that. And so, you know, it's your job to counsel them and help them navigate that. You have to think strategically in this role. I think sometimes people think we're the party people. We're either going to events or hosting events, or you know, we're working on relationships. But everything we do is strategic. You know, there's a reason for everything we support, for every organization that we collaborate with, and we really try and make the best of our limited resources. And finally, it's good to be someone who's genuine, honest, and approachable. I think people appreciate working with someone in this role. That's sort of what you see is what you get. You can count on them being straight with you and being honest and being fair, and always looking for that win-win. That when we work with people in the community or organizations, and in particular those that have far less resources than Mayo Clinic Health System, it's important that we're looking out for their interests as well as our own, and that we're supporting them, and that it's not all about us. Oops, sorry. As far as being engaged in the community, obviously there's a number of ways, and you are probably very familiar with yougetconnected.org, which has, you know, any number of volunteer opportunities in the community listed. I know UWL has its own page and it's well supported, so that's a great opportunity. But I would challenge people to think beyond just signing up for that once a month hour, you know, stocking a food shelf at a local pantry, and to consider instead seeking a role on a committee or even a board. If you are serving on a committee for that organization, maybe you're helping to plan a food drive or a fundraising event, you're going to be at the table with people in the community who are going to start building your social network, who can maybe help you later in life and impart information to you that you wouldn't have otherwise. There are lots of different civic organizations that provide opportunities to sort of grow your network and learn about your community, and just a few would be Rotary, Beer by Bike Brigade, which I believe you can belong to without consuming beer, and the JCs. Those are just a few. I speak to Rotary because I've been a member of Rotary for a long time, and Rotary is a big deal in our community. I think there are 8 local clubs, and every one of them has its own personality, own meeting schedule, and there's a good fit for everybody. And the thing about Rotary that I have found, that since I joined Rotary many years ago, there's not an event in this community that I go to where I don't know at least one person, and I think that's helpful. Other opportunities are to look to groups like Great Rivers United Way. They have an emerging leaders group, and the Chamber has a young professionals group. Both of those provide good opportunities for volunteerism and also for networking for young professionals. And then once you are started on your career, if you're in the city of La Crosse or in the area, the Chamber has a wonderful leadership program. And it's a great foundation for understanding your community, to learning about the history and the industry and the environment, and just getting a good start to your career, especially if you're interested in community engagement. And so with that, I would open it up to any questions if you have any.
have a question just to get us started here. How would a student go about joining or getting involved in a committee or organization that you mentioned on the last slide?
Well, I think, the first step might be to volunteer in an organization. So you go out you get connected, or you find an opportunity to serve in a volunteer capacity. But as you're doing that, you might share that, I'm interested in doing more. Are there committees I might be a part of, or, more organized activities that I could support? And, usually organizations are very happy to have people volunteer to do, not only that sort of day-to-day work, but also to be more engaged with that community, to learn more about the organization and to provide support.
Just to kind of follow up with that, are there ways that UWL students can get involved with Mayo specifically, or like have students gotten involved in the past at all?
Well, we have a volunteer services department, and so students often are involved, especially students who are in the health science areas, want to get that volunteer time so that, obviously it looks good on their resume, but they can also volunteer in specific areas that are of interest to them. And of course, we have students coming in all the time in rotations, job shadowing, and also through internships. And those they're not volunteer opportunities, but good opportunities to learn about healthcare and about our organization. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, again, thank you so much for letting me come tonight. It's always fun to talk about what you do and to maybe brag a little bit about community engagement as a profession and a career choice. And I hope that I have inspired people to think not only about community engagement as a business function or an organizational function, but also community engagement as something that adds value to your own life and to your own career. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you again for taking the time to present tonight.
Sure, you're very welcome.